Parshas Matos and Masei, with the greatest number of psukim in any one particular Shabbos, have a number of topics. One of the last ones is the concept of Ir Miklat, which we're all familiar with. Moshe Rabbeinu set up three Ore Miklat on the east side of the Yarden before his Petira, and the other three were set up on the west side of the Yarden, and that was where the V'nos Rotzeach, and the Rotzeach who was killing someone b'shageg had to run to the Ir Miklat, but they brought him back to Din to find out what the Din was, and then the pasuk says, "Ve'yeshiva oso ha'edo el Ir Miklato." They returned to the Ir Miklat. Asher nos shama, v'yoshav ba'ad mos hakohen hagadol, asher moshach oso b'shemen hakodesh. He has to stay there until the misa of the Kohen Gadol. If the Kohen Gadol died in 1 week, he will have to be there for 1 week. If the Kohen Gadol died 20 years later, he had to stay there for 20 years. And it could very easily happen, the Mepharshim bring down, that if the Kohen Gadol does not die and he dies, he's buried there. They don't take him back home. He has to be buried there. There are a number of inyanim what the Ore Miklat are, but basically it was a city of refuge, a city where a person would go where the Goel Hadam, the relative of the person he had killed, has no shlita over him. He's not allowed to touch him. All the Mepharshim discuss the fact that the mother of the Kohen Gadol used to daven for him because he didn't, and would go and prepare food for the people who were the Reitzchim, the people who died, who killed b'shageg. Okay, why? So that they shouldn't daven that her son would die. It's brought down in Chazal. It's a Medrash Rabbah. The fikach imosein shel kohanim misapkos lahen mirchya uchsus. The mothers would prepare food and would prepare clothing. Kadesh lo yispalalu al b'neim sheyamusu. Now that's in a Mishnah. In the Gemara, in the same Gemara, it brings a slightly different version of the Lashon, and it says, Kadesh yispalalu al b'neim shelo yamusu, that they should daven that they shouldn't die. The Gemara is medaktek and asks a simple question. This man, whoever he may be, a Pashat Yid or a Chashav Yid, killed someone by accident. The whole life of the Kohen Gadol is totally in the Tefillah of the Rotzeach, whether it's Shelo Yispalalu or She Yishpalalu, according to the second Shita. Why? Why? And the answer that's given is Shehoya Alehem Levakesh Rachamim Al Bnei Daram V'lo Darshu. That the Kohen Gadol was not strong enough in his tefillos. He was not intense enough in his tefillos to ensure that such an accident would not happen. It's just an accident. It was just an accident. Someone was lost their life. But this is the chiyuv, it's the responsibility of the Kohen Gadol, one of his many jobs, to ensure peace and tranquility amongst Klal Yisrael. His tefillah is the one that has to make that difference. So we see from this story how great the koich of tefillah is. Even the koich of the Rotzeach. The Kohen Gadol didn't daven, or it was not mispalel sufficiently. We understand the greatness, but even the tefillah of the Rotzeach, with his tefillah, can make or break whether or not the Kohen Gadol will live, and the mother has to go and prepare the food. So Rav Meir Chodosh, very famous Rav of the previous generation, was a mashgiach in the Chevron Yeshiva, would speak to the Talmidim. At the time that he spoke, it was a time, I believe, of the War of Independence, of Mechemes HaShichrur in Eretz Yisrael. There was tremendous loss of life, and he was trying to be mechazik them with their tefillos that they should daven for Klal Yisrael. The tefillos of these Amolei HaTorah, the Talmidim who are sitting and learning, he says, are exactly equivalent, this is his words, to the Kohen Gadol in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Lifnim. As Chazal say the words, Yekara hi mipninim, famous pasuk in, I believe it's Mishlei, Me Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim, because the pninim refers to the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. So therefore they have a tremendous responsibility to fulfill that tafkid of davening to save Klal Yisrael. I would like to read a little story from Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson from the Torah Any Times, which illustrates this thought. It's a little bit on the long side, but it's worth hearing. His email was received by Rabbi Jacobson's brother. It was from a man who identified himself as a musician living in upstate New York and primarily performed secular rock music. On Thursday, June 12, 2025, he was scheduled to play a concert in a bar in Poughkeepsie. At that night, in the early hours of Friday morning, Israel time around 3 a.m., the news broke that Israel had launched a surprise military operation against Iran. It was still early evening in New York. The musician says, as I stood performing on stage, the news began to circulate. Israel had struck Iran. I looked around the room. No one appeared to be Jewish. Something stirred in me. I could not remain silent. I paused the music and spoke from the heart. I told the audience what had just happened and asked everyone, regardless of background, to pray in their own way for peace. I then asked them to commit to one act of kindness to help heal a fractured world. The next night, Friday night, this musician, had a vivid and unusual dream. In this dream appeared Rabbi Leibel Groner, the longtime personal secretary of the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zatzal. In the dream, Rabbi Groner spoke directly to this musician, and he said, "The Rebbe asked me to come to you to thank you for what you did on the night that the war began. Your announcement in that bar stirred the soul of a Jewish woman. She decided that very Friday evening to light Shabbos candles for the first time since her bar mitzvah 50 years ago. Her mitzvah helped fortify the success of the Israeli Air Force. It brought protection to the people of Israel and drew more divine blessing into the world. The Rebbe sends his gratitude." The musician woke up stunned. "It was a beautiful dream," he wrote to my brother, "but I dismissed it as just that, a dream, until Sunday. On Sunday, he received an email from a woman he did not know. She had found his contact information through social media. Her message was simple but profound. I was at a bar in Poughkeepsie when you performed. I was deeply moved by your words. I had not lit Shabbos candles in 50 years, not since my bar mitzvah. But on that Friday evening I did, because of you." We often view the world through a purely external lens, unaware of the invisible threads binding us all together. But as Jews, we know otherwise. We don't always see everything that we do. We do mitzvahs, we daven, we put on tefillin, we light candles. But the results are real. When we recognize that every mitzvah that we do reverberates across the entire planet to all of Klal Yisrael, we understand the extraordinary power we have to influence not just our lives, but the destiny of humanity. I just saw there was a report that the IDF released, and with this I'll conclude, as it's in long. A jet flying over Iran developed fuel problem. He was going to have an emergency landing in, of all places, Iran. They were able to get a tanker plane up quickly enough to refuel him, and he was saved from having to make an emergency landing or to jettison over Iran. Every single plane came back from that mission. This lady did it. All of our tefillos did it. Not just this lady, all of our tefillos did it. So we have to realize how vital our davening is. When we're saying that to Tehillim every day for Eretz Yisrael, stay a little bit slower. Say a little bit with feeling, because that is what's keeping us safe, and that's what's keeping the Iron Dome moving. The tefillah of that Rotseach has the power to cut off the life of a Kohen Gadol. Can you believe that? It's unbelievable. The mother of the Kohen Gadol had to go out and chanfe him, to bribe him with food and clothing, to knock off that tefillah. As I've said to you more than one time on these to the family, the greatest person in the world, Kohen Gadol, the greatest place in the world, the Kodesh Kodashim, the greatest time of the world, Yom Kippur. It takes the Kohen Gadol in the Kodesh Kodashim on Yom Kippur to knock off the tefillah of a simple Jew who's walking down the street and says, Hashem, why are you making it rain? Please don't make it rain, I'm getting wet. We need all of that to knock off the simple tefillah of a Yid. We have to realize how powerful our tefillah is. And that is the message of this Vart.